Yeah.
All right, I'll call the meeting to order.
Sweat rolling down all day.
We're recording, we're good.
Oh, yeah, okay. All right, I'll call the meeting to order. We're gonna skip over the minutes, just because I've not had a chance to read them, and we'll do that later. So I guess we can move right on to the town manager's report.
Sure. Okay, so a couple months back now, I told you that, that the SB 401 bill had been approved and that we would be getting additional highway block funding for this year. We did receive it last week. It's an additional $30,000, $30,920.20. That came, and it can be used for the same scenarios, same situations as the normal annual highway block grant that we get every year. So for roads and streets, for reconstruction, for highway equipment, but that is our one-time extra bonus. So we did receive it.
Okay, and when you say it's can be used for the same as highway block grant, does that mean we don't have to spend that all?
Correct, it's non-lapsing.
Not lapsing.
So that's good news, especially because I think we have designated some of the highway block grant for the West Street overage. And so that kind of balances it back out, which is nice.
Okay.
Energy improvements. So we've been talking now for a couple months about the energy improvements with the DES grant that we received and also the New Hampshire Electric Co-op rebate. We have drafted that RFP. We are just waiting final kind of approval nod from DES to make sure that we are meeting all the ARPA grant requirements because it's part of the ARPA funds. But once we have that kind of final approval from DES, we are going to post it and hope to have a contractor in place by the end of next month. So that project is moving along.
And that's something that they can do even in the winter months? Is that correct, or?
To be honest, I don't know. I know it's installing two new mixers for the aeration ponds. I don't know if that's something that can be done in the winter, but I think we're hoping to have at least a contractor in place and equipment ordered if we have to wait to spring. But I can double check with Nate to see if that's something that can be happen over the winter.
I mean, just there was more curiosity.
Sure, yeah, I don't know.
If we're getting funds to do it and we have a contractor in place, that's pretty good with me.
I'll double check though, just to make
All
sure. We were notified by Health Trust, who is the town's non-union employee health insurance provider, that we would not be getting a return of surplus this year. For the last few years, we received a pretty hefty return from them due to the lack of claims during the COVID-19 pandemic. So in 2021, our rebate was, our surplus was 22,000 and change. We've been notified by Health Trust that claims have bounced back to the pre-pandemic level and to not expect those surpluses in the future.
Makes sense.
So just, it was a nice, budget, I guess, buffer, but we're gonna have to budget for the full thing moving forward. I don't ever think we took it as a reduction in the budget. We just probably took it as unanticipated revenue, is my guess.
How many claims have we had?
So this would be individual claims for individual health insurance, so we don't track how many times someone,
Okay.
goes to the doctor.
Okay.
This isn't workman's
Work
comp.
related.
Yeah.
Okay.
Riverfront Park update. This is kind of a big bummer. So we were notified by Ray last week, or maybe it was the week before, that our understanding of the Brownsfield grant was not totally accurate. That the Brownsfield grant that we had been applied for and were approved for was for an assessment grant, not a quote unquote cleanup grant. I spoke with Tammy, no one was really under that impression. Everyone thought it was a whole kind of package deal. That
We
it
talked
was-
about cleanup when we were there prior to the assessment. So
Right.
maybe they were assuming that we would also apply for, the fact that we talked about the cleanup and that they would incorporate our design with their cleanup, that led me to believe, but yeah, that's a bummer.
It is a bummer. So, the next step is essentially, the good thing is that last week or on August 3rd, DES announced another round of funding for cleanup. So Ray thinks that we are very strong candidates for the cleanup funding, seeing as we just did all the assessment work and DES has given their nod of approval and added their comments and their additional work that needs to be done.
Fantastic.
So the next round, the grant application is due September 15th. We looked it up today. It's a relatively simple 4-page kind of standard state DES grant application. We're gonna apply for it if the board thinks that's
Absolutely.
appropriate
Yes,
and
please.
get that ball rolling.
Yeah.
I'm gonna coordinate with Ray and obviously Tara, because I know we have some funding coming from other avenues with the phase 1 stuff. And Ray put together the grant application for the first phase. So we'll all kind of work together to push this through, but to get it applied for the September 15th
Fantastic.
deadline.
Thank you for that.
So, no problem. It is $200,000 per site, so that's the max we can be awarded. Ray thinks that's a good start to get us the wetlands mitigated, which is gonna be the next step before we can go any further in
Right,
phase 2.
right.
So. That's kind of
When
where
they did their assessment, did they give any kind of estimate or anything?
I didn't read the full document,
We don't
but
have that yet.
well, we have it, but it's extremely
Yeah,
lengthy.
sure.
Ray didn't itemize a cost figure out.
Do we have it digitally or is it just a hard
It's
copy?
digitally, I can forward it to
Yeah,
everyone,
forward it
it's
to the
links,
board.
yeah.
I'll fall asleep to it for a few
Okay.
minutes.
I can send it to everyone on digital to BOS.
Thanks.
But he does think it would take a huge chunk out of the wetlands portion of it, removing the sludge from the wetlands and making that phase of development possible. He said without
Fantastic.
the second phase of development, without that sludge removal, there is no second phase.
But we can
of
move
development.
forward with the first phase?
We can move forward with the first phase.
Great.
So,
Because we still have money from that grant.
correct,
Um,
for the river access.
Correct, river access grant, yeah.
The first phase includes the access down to the river.
Yes.
Yep.
Does it include the skateboard park?
Yep, parking
leveling?
lot and skate park.
Okay.
Okay, so does the assessment say that we can proceed with that without any removal or cleanup?
It says that DES has allowed for phase development of the park. Phase 1 could proceed, but phase 2 could not until the contaminated sludge in the wetlands was mitigated.
Fantastic.
Okay, and we have funding for
Yes. We have
the phase one.
funding that should cover the river access in the parking lot, obviously not finished, but gravel parking lot.
That's all we want.
And the area for the skate park, I mean, they've got money, they could do it tomorrow.
Well, that's what I thought, that they.
Yeah, I thought the skate park had their own funding for the skate park.
Right, we just,
Yep.
just
Level out the land.
level the land and tell them where they
They would.
Exactly.
Yes.
Here's your spot.
And we did talk about it in the CIP committee meeting this past week about continuing to fund that line because we're gonna need additional funds down the road, no matter what, most likely.
Hopefully they're matching grant funds.
Yeah, truly.
There are, quite a few grants out there that we just couldn't apply for until that brownfield assessment was done. And quite possibly the cleanup, but
Well, and just as a follow-up to this whole conversation, we have a meeting scheduled on September 7th, Ray, myself, Tara, just so we can be very clear what the
Excellent.
next steps are, what the next movements, just because
perfect.
me coming in kind of in the middle of this, I think I need to hear it with Ray and Tara, and we know where our money is and what's going and what the next steps are, so we have that scheduled for the 7th.
Okay, and can you present that to us after the 7th? Just,
Absolutely, yeah,
because if phase 1 can move forward,
let's get going.
let's at least establish a timeline.
Yeah.
Like we might only be able to do so much before winter.
Next summer.
Some during winter, but let's at least establish a timeline.
Absolutely, no, definitely.
Okay.
That's really, I know that seems like only a little bit, but that's really all I have for you this week. With vacations and summer, things have been relatively quiet. We did have a lull in building permits, but we received a handful of them last week. So we're back up and running with those, but we were down to less than half a dozen. And now we're gonna be around that 10 point, but still a manageable number. So that's going really well. And yeah, that's kind of where we stand
Where are
right
the
now.
majority of those coming from?
They are coming from the landing in South Peak.
Both, okay.
More of them
Open
from
up there.
South Peak than the landing, but they're both seem to be where everything's being concentrated. Excellent.
All right, Jack, did you have anything?
Yes, I was approached by a couple of town residents about, and I guess this ties into the meeting that Tammy went to last week, about affordability of housing, particularly for, help that's living here and for local residents that don't have to sell their house. I mean, that want to stay here, be part of the community, have been part of the community, born and brought up here. But their children, their grandchildren can't live here because there's no room in the inn. So, my suggestion is that maybe we form a committee and, a affordable housing committee. And we're not talking low income, but we're talking affordable. People sometimes get the wrong impression.
Right,
It's slumlord. I grew up in public housing, so my father was a veteran and it was veterans housing. So I think that might be a good start. You attended that meeting. You said no developers were there.
No,
We all
not a
know that
single
land
developer.
is one of the big issues here.
Right.
Is there land that, one of the things that some communities have done, I looked a little bit, has passed ordinance that any development over 25 units has to set aside 10 to 20% of the units as affordable. And affordable ties into the FMRs and the fair market rate rent, and it ties into income statutes as decided by, determined by HUD. So anyways.
that was something we did talk about at that meeting, and that it's, hindsight is 20/20. In the 70s, we should have been doing this, and we'd be in good shape now. However, it wasn't an issue in the 70s, so we didn't do it for obvious reasons. And that on any single solution, Lincoln's pretty much missed the boat. However, if we take a cumulative effort and, a little bit set aside when a developer does a large project as a percentage, or when even a single family home, comes in, there's something that goes towards workforce housing. And there were several other ideas thrown around that if we do all of them and bring it together, it might be a viable solution, but one or the other isn't gonna do it at this point because, honestly, Lincoln's, other than a couple of pieces of land, has built out.
I will say that we, this week alone, have had 3 conceptual conversations with developers, businesses in town, in regards to that Invest New Hampshire funding that just came out.
That was what they were here for, and it's not.
Sure, so we met with a business this morning, a business in town this morning, looking at a potential revamping or an addition on a current multifamily and home to add more units.
So they already have their planning board approval,
So that is
so they
something,
don't qualify.
I guess that is being petitioned right now because everyone, they're supposed to have planning board approval by September 15th or something, whatever it is, and not only planning board approval, but also building permit approval,
Correct,
which is nearly impossible for not
Permit in
just Lincoln, but
right.
any community in New Hampshire,
Well,
you
if you
know?
look beyond that though, because it was the 60% of that was going southern part of the state in Nashua, Portsmouth, Manchester area, and then the 40% was coming north. And there are a lot of developers that are into big
Already
projects,
into it,
and that because of COVID-related expenses are way over budget by a few million, and this is what's gonna cover it. Was the, political BS behind all that.
100 million, yeah, 100
So
million.
40 million was coming to the North Country, but there's there was one developer that was named that's in Conway that's 3.8 million over budget or something on that already received it.
Right.
So he's cleared his budget. And then there was another one, and I forget where the other one was, that was applied for another 4.5 million because they were over.
Sure.
There was a local that has the potential for 8 apartments. The apartments are there, they just need some financial assistance to rehab them a little.
Sure.
And not even significant monies. That doesn't qualify, because there's no way she'll have the ducks in a row prior to September 15th, and it disqualified from it.
Well, we had talked about if it would be acceptable to the state and to their grant application, where we could write I don't want to call it generic, but we could write a letter of support that says if they meet all zoning requirements, if they meet, or if they require a variance, if they meet the town regulations as approved by the planning board and the ZBA, then we would be in support of this project. So the town can then essentially show our support for the workforce housing, but not say you're gonna have blanket approval through the planning and zoning process and the building permit process. More of a, we support it if you meet our regulations.
Are the developers aware of is it 50 and 80%, is that right? That they're depending on the project, they can only
Yes,
charge 80% of the state average.
they
Percent
seem
or
to be,
50% if
again,
you're
some
over.
seem a little bit more well-versed in the grant program than others.
Yeah.
But there are definitely developers and businesses in town that are
That's
interested in
awesome.
doing something, and I think you'll probably see some of them at the next planning board meeting as
That's
conceptuals.
fantastic.
So,
And I mean, there are things that the town can do. You know, sometimes it falls well with neighbors, sometimes it doesn't. Is increased density.
Yep.
And even tax breaks, you know, you can defer taxes.
That was one of those cumulative things we
Yeah.
talked about, tax
Did
break,
you?
tax
Yeah.
incentive, yeah.
Yeah, tax incentive
Yeah.
to build. I mean, again, you know, it starts at the ground level and works its way up, get community input. The people that have lived here get their input. The business community, obviously, that's important. They need the help. I mean,
I
you know,
wholeheartedly agree something should be done.
so,
Right.
And
well,
we
one
should
of
reach
the,
out to North Country Council, because they've got a good, leg in this.
yeah, well, I think we
already.
definitely are gonna need to make changes to our zoning ordinance next year to account for some of these scenarios, because one of the things that we were talking about this morning was that a hotel can go on a small footprint because of the amount of the parcel that it's taking up. But a apartment building can't, because that's considered residential versus commercial. So maybe we need to make changes to some of the residential, whether it's multifamily homes or apartment buildings, or putting a how many unit figure to it, to make some changes, because if someone wanted to come in and do 25 apartments, they would need to have 30 acres to do so, or something, you know, that's maybe an exaggeration, but they would need much more land than a hotel, which is run similarly to a boarding house, or what could be for workforce housing. So we might have to investigate some of those things for next year.
well, I think all you have to do is turn around and look out the window and we see a motel over there that's been utilized. I mean, am I correct, Ron? That's been utilized for workforce housing. It's
What motel? Oh, we're across the way, yeah.
right behind me.
Yeah, for
And the
years.
one up on Route 3, Woodward's before it got, or after it got sold, but I think there were people that were being housed there that were part of the workforce. It wasn't a motel per se, it was more long-term for employees.
No, it's the other,
Beacon North,
the
Beacon North
old Inn in Lincoln,
in
Yeah.
Lincoln.
Travel Lodge now, I believe.
Yeah.
Well, we just want to make sure that, because we know it's a need for this community, that we are making our zoning regulations that help encourage those type of things versus make it harder for people to do those type of things.
The planning board needs to, really be the
Yeah,
board to address this. The
Yeah.
things that we have discussed is increasing density and considering a multi-unit apartment building as a commercial rather than a residential
Right.
use. Because, you know, that was my point with the Hampton Inn is, you know, we gave any landowner of that or a similar property the choice of building a whatever that is, 90-room hotel
mhm,
or 6 apartments.
right,
And
doesn't make sense.
that's our zoning laws, that's what we're telling me he can build. So we're basically telling me you have to build a hotel
Hotel.
because making 6 apartments there is just
Right.
not feasible. So one thing is to change the category that we call multifamily. The second is what you said is the density.
Right.
One of the things that we discussed this year is changing the density to allow greater density developments if there's if it's a long-term residential use. We spent a lot of time talking about how to define that in 6 months and this and that.
Can that be something that's deeded into a property?
It can be a planning board approval restriction. That we give extra density if you're long-term, but the condition of approval is that it's,
I love the
6 month
idea,
minimum.
however, it's scary that, I mean, it's planning board conditions of approval aren't enforced now. So when they let them build this 8
Well-
apartment building and then they start Airbnb-ing it, nothing's gonna happen.
Well, we would hope that
every single condition of planning board approval is not being enforced right now,
Right,
all right? Because some of them get written in there and 10 years later, no one remembers,
right,
okay? When there's a big, huge thing, like you can't rent these out for Airbnbs, no one's gonna forget that.
well,
It's-
if it's a duplex or, you know, with just 4 apartments or something, it's, and you say no one's gonna forget it, if we're not gonna be here, I'm not gonna be sitting here in 20 years.
Right, but
No,
a deed
yeah.
restriction can only be enforced by the owner of the property anyways.
True,
So if
true.
we ask them to put a deed restriction in as a condition of approval, they're the only ones that can enforce that,
Yeah.
so.
Right, I guess doing something is better than doing nothing, so yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if you started selling hot dogs and beer out of your garage, okay?
Don't tell me.
That's
I was
not,
gonna say,
that's
you
not
should have
any
a lunch.
condition of approval. Do you think someone would
How
like
did you find out?
follow up about that? I mean, things that are flagrant
Right.
violations,
Right.
people are gonna get in an uproar.
Right.
You know, if you, you know, take down a fence that no one remembers was supposed to be there, including people who live right next door and across the street, which is me. I didn't know that. Those kind of things get overlooked,
Yeah.
but something flagrant, no. And my personal thought with that is that I think we should make general density requirements even stricter. And I don't think the whole planning board, I know the whole planning board doesn't agree with me on that. Make it so you can't develop a property as dense as we're allowing it now, but allow that extra density when you're doing long-term residential.
Incentives.
Yeah, provided as an incentive. You know, we're seeing major developments on small lots,
Tiny
you know,
lots.
just developed out to the brim.
Mhm.
But they're doing it within our ordinance, you know, people get upset about, you know, how can you let that happen? It's like, we have an ordinance. They abided by it. We can't just say, we don't like that. That's not the
Right.
role of the planning board, is to say, oh, we like this, we don't like that. It's, do they meet the requirements? You know, we have a say in, you know, the architectural flavor, a bit of this and that, but if they have parking and setbacks and height and all, they meet all the rules, you just can't say, yeah, we don't like that.
You're 100% correct.
So anyway, there's a lot of this that really needs to be addressed by the planning board. And like I said, I've pushed for that inclusion of apartment or multi-units, I don't want to say apartments, multi-units as commercial.
Well, like I said, I know that you're probably gonna have at least 2 conceptuals in regards to this workforce housing for next week's meeting.
Good.
And I think this is kind of probably, you know, full steam ahead, the conversation of, you know, push the conversation ahead of how do we change our zoning to be more accommodating to this issue that we're having.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
And I mean, one of the things that, again, I've heard people complain about is the fact that we've got Airbnbs in a residential district. Is an Airbnb commercial?
That's been decided by the
Not
courts of
Conway.
the state already.
North Conway is, you know,
Courts, yeah,
bringing suit again, I think.
votes of
on
not
that
appeal.
issue.
yeah.
So,
Yeah, we'll see how that appeal turns
Turns
out.
out, right.
I don't see us. I wouldn't encourage the town of Lincoln to get involved in that fight while it's still being
Oh, I
decided in
wouldn't.
court.
No way.
We have enough of those.
Yeah, I mean,
Let's let them spend the legal money and then
Fight your own
we will
battles.
jump on the train afterwards.
If the
Yeah,
court confirms that that's a residential use, we're gonna have to abide by that and I don't know how
whether
else
we like
to
it or not, it doesn't
Right,
matter.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Right, no,
take
it
action.
doesn't, but, you know, it's the tenor of the town.
Absolutely.
Well, and that was part of the discussion this morning we were having, that how will the neighbors feel, how will the abutters feel, having, essentially workforce housing across the street, and I said, well, most of them have short-term rentals right now across the
Right, so it
street,
doesn't matter. Right,
is it gonna be vastly different? I mean, is it gonna be people who are contributing to the community, or people who are visiting the community, I mean, so.
And I mean, that's one of the problems. People want it, but it's the NIMBY situation, not in my backyard.
Oh, when
I
we
want
talked
it,
about,
but you can't put it in my
Remember
backyard.
when-
But
who
where are
was
we
it?
gonna put it?
in Littleton, that came down, Ahead came down and talked about workforce housing and had a couple pieces in mind, and this one filled, and everybody said, it's a great idea, but not in my backyard. And they were adamant of that, you're not doing it in Lincoln. But we need it, and keep working on it, but don't do it here.
Right,
Yeah, exactly.
Jim has a question.
Jim,
Yeah, a couple things on that. Mountain View condos on Pollard Road.
Yeah.
I believe there's at least 10 apartments in that building, if not 12. And that's on a piece of land about a quarter of the size of Hampton Inn's being built on.
And those
How did they get their
individually
permits?
owned condominiums. One
Mountain View condos,
Mountain View condos is in between Maple and Church, right?
right.
Yeah, that's,
There's at least 10
Those
10
are-
apartments.
they're not apartments. One person doesn't own the whole building and rent the 10 apartments. Each unit is individually owned as a condominium.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
it's totally
okay.
different, yeah.
But,
Yeah.
If people are looking for a nice place to build something like that, the place is right off the end of an exit. You've got a convenience store and a gas station across the street where Mountaineer Motel used to be.
You should buy it and build one there. Yes.
It's the foundation's still there.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It's all grown in. I mean, it's not viable anymore, but yeah. Oh, no, I totally agree. That'd be a great place.
The
That'd be a
town
great
can't make some
place.
kind of
Be
deal with
perfect.
Gym or something?
But it's, I mean, I believe it's Jim's mother that still owns the property.
Oh,
And you'd have to, somebody would have to purchase the property. First, you'd have to get them to sell it. And I don't know if they want to sell or not. It's their property. I have no idea. So somebody would have to purchase it.
Because it's already commercial.
Right, and then somebody would have to build an apartment building, and then somebody would have to manage it and rent out the apartments, and that's not me. That's certainly not the town of Lincoln,
No, but some of these people that are.
that would be fantastic,
That want
yeah. Absolutely, I would
to,
love to see that happen,
contracting companies and looking to place to build stuff.
I would love to see it happen, but it starts with the property owner first, so,
Because I was, that'd be fantastic.
absolutely. I don't disagree.
yeah, I mean, there are places in town where there's, you say the whole town's built out, it's too late to do it. Well, it's later than it should be, but there's still some potential lots available for either development or redevelopment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got 3 acres, but you're not gonna have it all.
The thing I was talking about adding a new category of business use called restricted multifamily residential housing for long-term rentals. That was adopted by the town in 21, sort of after the Hampton Inn, but kind of as a result of when you said, okay, that's the choice they have, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
So we did change that as a town.
Mhm.
I think, again, the next step is going further with density
Density.
changes, and I see that on both sides. Make regular density more strict, so that the town isn't being overdeveloped, but allow it to be overdeveloped for long-term housing.
Well, I kept my house instead of selling it and put it long term. That's all I could do. I wish I owned 20 of them, but I don't. Actually, I don't. It's kind of a pain in the butt. Never mind. Forget I said that. No, and for as long as I own it, it'll be for long-term local. And it's extremely reasonable.
Did you have anything else to bring up?
There was one minor thing. Going down Pollard Road the other day, I saw a number of cars stopped out in front of Don Landry's house, looking at his beautiful flowers. I think we ought to send something to Don, a little accommodation from the town, just saying, you know, what a beautiful job you're doing to showcase the town. You know, I think that's the most beautiful area.
Absolutely.
It is beautiful. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's
I was today.
amazing.
I don't even
Yeah.
know how it's possible that that
Yeah.
happens. I mean,
Oh.
it's beautiful.
He's retired. That's how it's
Well,
possible.
he was out there this
It's
morning.
fantastic.
I went and looked at the
Just
parking area.
Yeah.
Just stop.
He was out there with his little backhoe on his hands and knees.
Oh,
pulling
fantastic.
weeds
Yeah,
and
they're
doing
beautiful.
whatever. It is beautiful.
They're absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, so can we, from the board of the town manager, a little
Sure.
citation or
Yes,
accommodation?
something, yeah.
Thank you for, you know, keeping up the beautiful, whatever.
They're awesome. You can volunteer to fill my vase anytime. No, they are gorgeous. Thank you for that, because that's, I agree, that's great.
Did you have
I
anything?
had a couple of things. One was, Loon recently did a, online auction of the Seven Brothers chairlifts. A few of the chairs, or a chair or something, I'm not 100% sure. I found out kind of after the fact or during the auction.
66 chairs.
66 went, and it's over now. Of course, I didn't find out in time to say anything publicly, but the benefit is this was for Friends of Rec, Lincoln was like Friends of Rec, yeah,
Wow.
which is amazing,
Yeah.
yeah.
That's awesome.
So when the Friends of Rec gives out, and I don't have any of the figures in front of me, of course, but a lot of scholarships for after-school program, day camp, the ski program, different things. And we'll purchase equipment if a kid needs it. You know, there has to be a need. And, you know, they do a lot for the kids in the community. So it's really awesome.
That's really
It's a
great.
really good
They were
thing.
asking a minimum, I think, of $350 for it.
Fabulous. Yeah.
Some of them were going higher, so.
I mean, thank you, Loon Mountain.
Yeah.
That's
awesome.
yeah.
is
It's really great.
I totally unaware of that, like,
Yeah.
what are they?
I shared it on Facebook, but I shared it on Facebook like the day or something before it was over. Yeah. It
Yeah,
was
we had a woman on there at community club meeting, we were talking about. it.
Absolutely
We had money,
fantastic.
so.
Yeah, absolutely fantastic. And then,
Can we send them a thank you note or
well,
maybe Friends
once,
of Rec?
once we get
Okay,
whatever we
let's
get,
wait
the
on
Friends of
that.
Rec will send a thank you. And once we get whatever it is, I'll let everybody know what that was.
Yeah,
too.
that'd be great. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I just wanted to mention that we did have a non-meeting with town council regarding the estoppel certificate for the Veterans Park. And we did, at advice of the council, we did sign that and sent it over to the parties involved. I want to make sure we said that publicly.
Right, because at that meeting, we said we were gonna say it publicly,
Absolutely.
and I did not
Yeah,
write that down.
No, I just want to make
Thank
sure
you.
we said that. We did meet with council and advice of council, it has been signed and delivered or picked up or whatever. At CIP meetings, we were talking about Old Hole access.
Mhm.
And Nate was saying that with what's in that line item, as far as like Old Hole and whatnot, for CIP for this year, he can get in a rudimentary walkway, but we need to decide what we want to do and how much we want to do. He can get in something quick and easy so people can walk down there. Maybe not a parking area, which is fine, we can park on the side of the road, which will be fine, it will not be ADA compliant. Do we need ADA compliant? Do we need it paved? Do we want to leave it gravel? Do we want stairs? Do we not want stairs? Do we want a railing? Do we not want a railing? When do we want to do a parking lot? How big of a parking lot? What do we want it to be? Gravel, do we want pavement? That needs to be decided so we can get money in the CIP and start saving for that. So we really need to discuss and decide exactly what we want to do. My suggestion would be for you to walk it with Nate.
Okay.
And come back to us with your suggestions.
He guessed because he said there were some bigger trees that would be
Yeah. If you could go in between them,
Costly.
instead of taking them out.
Between, yeah,
And he said, coming down off that hill, if it's ADA compliant, we're gonna have to have a switchback.
yeah, it's.
It's not gonna come straight down.
Oh, I know it is.
So, I would, if you could get with Nate and walk it and look at it, because you were there when the surveyors and whatnot went through and check it out and then come back to us with your recommendation, would be awesome.
Yeah, because he thinks he can rough it in for some short money, but
Right.
it's going to be, 5,000, I think he
Yeah.
said, but it's gonna be a roughed in, non-ADA compliant,
Right.
steep
If we get it,
incline.
so you and I could get down there for the
Right.
next couple of years, but we're gonna have to fund whatever it is we want permanently.
Correct.
It's not gonna fall out of the sky.
I mean, the one that's there now, not that it's in the right place, but the one that people use now is certainly not ADA
No.
compliant either.
Right, but if we are saying that we own this and are providing access to it,
Promoting it,
we're
right.
probably going to, and recreational ADA is
It's
different than a business ADA. So, you know, that could be
We'd have to, make sure that we're.
researched a little bit.
Yeah.
There might be some funding available.
There's definitely some funding, that we
Absolutely.
can
Yeah.
continue to apply for grants for,
Right.
but I think the sooner we get access, the better, and it may not be in its final stages next summer, but if we can
Oh, I'm
at
all
least
for the
get
temporary
right.
access, absolutely. But we do need to do some long-term planning for what we want to do with that.
All right, I'll meet with Nate
Okay,
for the next
Thank you for that.
episode.
I would like to join just so I have an
Yeah.
understanding. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, perfect. And then the last thing, we had recently a 91A request that I just want to point out a couple of things. This is dated July 26th. Ex-police chief Ted Smith requested, this one first, all records, no matter what form, including but not limited to printed documents, electronic documents, emails, or any other form of records regarding the on-duty death of Steve Bomba of the Lincoln Fire Department, claiming benefits 2016 through 19, federal death benefits, state death benefits, town insurance company, information, National Fallen Firefighters Foundation, and any other entity the town advised, which is fine, he's entitled to what he's entitled to. I just wanted to point out that our town manager spent more than 15 hours collecting and redacting the data. We've got several hours in with our town attorney for advice on what we can and can't release because it is a personnel item, which is huge. Which brings me, which is fine, again, all fine, because he's absolutely, anybody's entitled, any of that, it's all a 91A request. He also, on the same day, requested all records, no matter what form, including but not limited to printed documents, electronic documents, emails, or any other form of record regarding mutual aid agreements signed by Chief Smith for the period from August 1 of 16 to September 1 of 18. And the last correspondence of emails, when it was determined that we don't have those records, we're not required to keep them, the statutory requirement dates has passed, we don't have them. We're not required to have them any longer. Ted replied, "Thank you. According the records and emails that were sent to me, the records were destroyed prior to December 5th, and that the town, September 5th, 2019, and that the town attorney was quite upset finding out they were destroyed, FYI, which pisses me off. If he knew we didn't have him, why is he wasting town money to have us go looking for them and paying employees to do it? Stuff like that just pisses me off. I just wanted to point it out. I don't want to comment, I don't want anything, I just want to say I'm mad.
How do you really feel?
You don't wanna know.
No, oh, I hate when people waste time and money and effort and stomp on morale. It's not necessary and it pisses me off. Yes, he's entitled to all those records, but if you already knew we didn't have it, why would you ask for it? Sorry. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you.
One more thing I would like to bring up, just because I forgot in my town manager's report, is at the last meeting, we received a complaint about a non-wildlife animal dumpster at a location on Lewis Lane, I believe, or?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is that house on Lewis Lane?
Yes.
Eight Lewis.
Lewis Lane, yes. We made contact with the homeowner the following day and the dumpster was removed from the property by the end of the week, so.
So you found out about it on Monday, you contacted the property owner on Tuesday, and they rectified it on Friday.
Yeah, well, I can't take all the credit. Deputy Fairbrother was actually the one who contacted the homeowner and
But still,
did all the
the
correspondence.
town
with her.
was notified on Monday,
Yes.
they contacted the owner on Tuesday, and it was rectified on Friday. Awesome, fantastic,
Thank
can't
you.
ask for better than that,
And thank you, Ryan.
yes.
All right, well,
Okay, are you gonna point out the complaint that you
oh,
received?
no, but I will, thank you for reminding me.
Yes.
I
I won't, so,
I have received a couple of complaints from various people on the unsightliness getting off exit 33 of the vehicles parked on that first lot on the right there, that there was a bunch of just trucks, cars, boats, campers, seemingly like a auto, I don't say salvage yard, but storage facility. I spoke independently with the two parties involved, the landowner and the vehicle owner, and that is being cleaned up. I told the various people who had complained to me that we would look at it, discuss it with the owners and take appropriate action. So I'm just kind of announcing that it's being cleaned up without the town's further involvement other than having a conversation. And it's well on its way to looking much better. So just if those people are out there or hear this on Zoom, you did take action and you're welcome to go up and take a look at it and see what you think. It looks much better. Thank you for reminding me of that. And I guess with that, I'll open it up for public participation.
anyone, Bueller? Sorry, I had to. That was a good movie.
And if there's none, we need to discuss a personnel issue in non-public.
Is there anything in that folder? And we still have minutes.
There's the letter outlining the
DOT award.
DOT money that we received. There's a letter outlining the actual regular block grant that we received. There's a thank you note from the Grafton County Senior Citizens Council.
Nice.
Thank you note from Mid-State Health Center. That's it. Let's go back to the minutes. I didn't have anything. Did you have anything?
I did, and now this is in the regular, not the joint, correct? Is that what you're
Right,
looking at?
Monday,
Of
July 25th is regular meeting.
The only thing I had is on page 5, the line 203. It says in the middle school library, it's in the middle high school library. We don't have just a middle school, so I don't want anybody to be confused. It should say middle/high school library.
Okay.
And then, do we want to point out that it's Linwood School, or am I splitting hairs?
Split hairs.
Okay, thank you. That's it, just middle high school library. We'll get where's the middle school? I know where the high school is, yeah.
Spot on, Tam. Yes, ma'am.
So I'll make a motion to
Wait, did you have anything, Jack?
No, sir.
Okay.
approve as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so we get the minutes.
And now we have the joint meeting minutes of the 25th,
Which I have those, I read those already.
and I didn't have anything.
I didn't.
I'll make a motion
Make a
to,
motion to approve them as distributed.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And then we
We
have
have the copies to sign.
approved right here. This one, there's the first ones. There's the second one, the joint. And then we have a non-public meeting minutes of July 25th, and I'll make a motion to approve as presented.
So, second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Jane, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Jane.
With that,
The only other thing we have is the
the bills.